Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of T-Dog RC. And today's video is going to be all about really an easy way and probably hopefully a cheap way of getting into fixed wing FPV. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So I decided to get into FPV. Again, this was kind of a lockdown situation when we went back into the second lockdown here in the UK, which was the back end of 2020 and all through the winter and into this into the spring. I decided to sort of have a play with FPV and get my head around FPV, and I sort of really got quite into the whole thing and using flight controllers and from Maytech and flashing those with iNav and all that sort of stuff, and I decided to buy a DJI HD setup. So yeah, that's what I sort of did, and I spent a lot of time researching it and learning things like iNav and all that sort of stuff, and it's quite heavily involved. But of course the experience of flying FPV is a completely different experience to normal fixed wing flying line of sight, and it adds another dimension to flying basically, which is why I wanted to have a go at doing it. It's not going to be my main sort of side of the hobby, and in fact this is probably the last video for a little while that I'm going to do on FPV. I have got another FPV project in the box ready to go, so at some point in the future I'll be doing another video on that, but certainly the next few videos are going to be back to more sort of standard fixed wing and even a bit of bolster and nitro. But I wanted to kind of finish off my FPV adventure, if you like, by doing a video on how you can get into fixed wing FPV fairly cheaply and fairly easily. So that's what this video is about. So what I wanted to do is just go through with you the setup that you could use to have a go with FPV that's not going to cost too much money at all. And also one thing that's important to mention is that I'm doing a giveaway in this video. So if you make sure you watch to the end of the video, I've got something that is ideal if you are thinking about dipping your toes into FPV but you don't want to spend too much money. This piece of kit that I've got to give away is a great thing that's going to help you get started. So all you need to do to enter the giveaway is you have to be a subscriber. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, then please click the subscribe button. Give me a like as well whilst you're there, so click on the thumbs up. There's a lot of people who watch the channel that aren't subscribers. Probably the majority of people that watch the channel aren't subscribers. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and also to be in with a chance of winning, not only do you have to subscribe, but you also just need to put a comment in the comments box below. That can be anything. You can either talk about your experience with FPV, or you can literally just put an X in a box. It's up to you. Obviously it'd be nice if you put a comment about your experience with fixed wing FPV. Yeah, and then I will let that run for a few weeks, and then I'll do a very quick follow-up video where I'll choose the winner on my computer, and I've got a program that I use that will pick one of the comments at random and choose that person as the winner. You then send me an email to my email address, which I'll tell you once on that video, and I will post this item out to you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, I'll post this over to you. That's not a problem. So let's get the camera on the bench and talk about my setup that I've got here. Okay, so this is just a standard Bixler from Hobby King. It actually makes quite a good FPV platform for two reasons. Number one, well, it's three reasons actually. It's obviously a cheap plane. It's very easy to fly. Second reason is it's very stable. You can get decent flight times out of it as well, because it glides quite well, so you can sort of get it up to height and then switch the motor off and just glide around. And then the third reason is you do actually get in the box a little FPV conversion mount, which they include with the kit. So this is how it comes as standard. So it's just got you know, like a normal hatch as you would expect, but they do also include this rather neat ply FPV mount, which fits on where the hatch does, and it's got the magnets built into it already and all that sort of stuff. So I have modified this a little bit, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do this. But I actually cut the middle of it out to get in my, I used DJI FPV equipment, so the HD system, but obviously you don't have to use that, you can use standard analog stuff. So I've got my transmitter, FPV transmitter mounted here. So as I say, I cut this out to get this the DJI system in here, and then I just 3D printed a mount for this, which I'll put, which is on Thingiverse, so I can put a link to that down below. And then I've also got a 3D printed camera mount, which again was just off Thingiverse. And then what I've done as well is I've put a servo in here, just a basic 9-gram plastic geared servo, just so I've got a pan option on the camera. So that's I've just put that on the slider on the transmitters, so I can pan the camera around. But again, you don't have to do that. You could keep it really simple, and you could fasten your, I'd probably recommend to keep things simple if you fasten your video transmitter to this, and of course your camera, which you can just fasten onto the front here, however works best for you, with a cable tie or something like that. Or you could print, again 3D print a mount for your particular camera, and just screw it onto here, or glue the mount onto here. But if you mount your transmitter onto this, then it's going to get plenty of airflow and keep it cool, because the video transmitters do tend to get pretty hot. And then that basically just, you know, goes on the front just like the canopy would. So you just put that on there, that just fastens on there like that. Yeah, and it just sits on there nicely. I do also use an elastic band, which I just loop around the top, just to add that bit of extra security, because I don't particularly want to lose, just in case anything happens, I don't want to lose my DJI VTX and camera, because it's quite expensive. But yeah, that is a really simple way to get the camera and VTX working. And then what I've done, this is probably, well actually no, you could use this for analog as well. So the solution I've got to power this, again it's just a very simple solution, but I just use a little Beck here, which supplies a constant, I think it is 12 volts it is. Again, I can try and find, I can't quite think where I got this from. I think it was flyingtech.co.uk. So I'll have a look and see if I can put a link in the bottom. And I can't quite remember what make this is, to be honest. I think it's one of the, it's quite a well-known brand, but it doesn't actually say on it. But this supplies a constant voltage, so it doesn't fluctuate as the battery runs out or gets low on power, which some cameras don't like that, and particularly DJI. And basically all this does is I've connected this lead to it, and that just plugs into the balance port on your battery. So it couldn't be simpler. So all I do is plug my battery in, connect it to the XT60 to power the plane, and then I just connect that to the balance port, and that powers my video transmitter and my camera, and we're good. You get that with the Bixler in the box. And then the other thing, everything else in here is just absolutely standard, just the same speed controller that comes with it. I've got a standard receiver, I've not got a long range receiver or anything like that. But one thing I would certainly recommend is to look at getting a flight controller, because when you fly FPV, it is really easy to lose track of where you are. And you might think you're going in a certain direction, and then you turn the plane round, and all of a sudden you can't quite figure out where you are relative to the flying field or from where you've taken off. Or what could also happen is you could lose the video feed to your goggles, and then you take your goggles off and realise the plane, you can't actually see the plane. Obviously, hopefully you've got a spotter with you if you are flying FPV, but if for whatever reason they can't see it either, you've basically lost the plane. So it is a recommendation. It's not a requirement to have a flight controller, but it is something that I would highly recommend if you're going to have a go at FPV. And you don't have to have anything fancy like a Maytech flight controller or something similar like that, where you have to flash it with some software and configure all the software and all that sort of stuff. You can use something very simple like the ZOHD Kopilots, which I'm a big fan of. And the main function that these have is a return to home function. That's the main thing I use on, particularly on this Bixler. It does have things like stabilization and all that sort of stuff, but you don't need that, of course, on a model like this. But crucially, what you do need is the return to home, and this comes with the GPS. So when you first power it up, it gets a GPS lock, so it knows where you are, where you've taken off from. And if you lose signal from your radio, or as I've said, you lose transmission, video transmission in your goggles, you can flick the return to home button, or if you've lost transmission on your radio, it will go into failsafe and the plane will just turn around and fly back, basically. And there's no programming in this. It's just very simple. You just get the controller with it, like a controller card, and you just configure it using the controller card. You don't have to plug it into your computer. Well, you can't plug it into your computer. It's very easy to set up, and it's a very simple flight controller, and that's all you need. And then all I've done on this is I've got the flight controller mounted down there. It does have to be on a flat surface, and it has to be mounted in a certain direction, but there is an arrow on it anyway. And again, it's very easy. So basically all you have is I use S-Bus. So my S-Bus lead comes out of my receiver and into the Kopilot, and then the servos all plug into the Kopilot, so the Kopilot can control the servos and the speed controller. But if you don't use S-Bus, then you basically just use standard connecting leads to take your, for example, the aileron feed out of your receiver, put it into the aileron feed in the flight controller. Same with the elevator, etc. So really easy to set up. You connect the GPS to it, mount the GPS somewhere on the outside. So I've just glued that there so it can get a good signal. And that's basically it. You are pretty much good to go, and you're good to have your first experience with FPV. There are a couple of rules around FPV. If you're not familiar with them, then you should make sure you get yourselves familiar with them. Different in different countries, I think, but certainly here in the UK, not supposed to fly FPV on your own. You need to have someone with you that can keep an eye on the model and warn you if there's any low-flying real aircraft or anything like that. And you're not allowed to fly above 400 feet, and you can't fly over people and properties and that kind of thing. So it's fairly common sense stuff, to be honest. But obviously you do need to check the requirements in your country before you do an FPV flight, just to be on the safe side. And then the other thing I've done, but again, this isn't essential, but I've got a little altimeter sensor in here. So I've just got a FlySky receiver in this, so I've just got this little FlySky altitude sensor. I think that was about £10, if that. It's really cheap, and that just plugs into the receiver. And then I've just got that set up on a momentary switch on the transmitter, so I just flick that, and that will read out the altitude to me, so I know how high I am, because obviously when you've got the goggles on, again, you can't really gauge how high you are, so it's good to have that so you know that you're not going too high. Because this isn't a fancy flight controller, it doesn't have an on-screen display as such, particularly if you're using it through the DJI system. There's no output from this to a camera, so there's no on-screen display, so that's why I've got that altimeter. Again, that's not essential, it's just something that I would recommend. So yeah, that's that. And then to really keep it simple, if you haven't got the budget for DJI or you want to dip your toes in it without spending that sort of money first, just to check that you like it, then of course you can stick with analog. And while we're on the subject of ZOHD, you can buy something like this, which is the ZOHD, they call it the PIGGYBACK camera, the VC400. and it's not the best camera in the world, but it's a very, very, very simple setup. Basically, this has not been used. This is a brand new one. If I just get it out of the box. So the beauty of this little unit is that this is a video transmitter and a camera all in one unit, and of course the transmitter on there as well. It literally just has a JST socket, just positive and negative, and I think you can power this from various voltages. So again, you could use something exactly like that setup I showed you, because if you look at this, this has just got a JST lead on it as well, going to the balance port, so you could connect this cable up to here and just power this. Really simple. Basically, again, there's no communication between this and your flight controller, but then you would buy this, you'd stick this, mount this on here. You know, I mean, this is obviously quite big for a little thing like this, so you may not even need to use this. You could even just, if you wanted to, use this and mount it on the front, put a hole through there for the lead to come through, or, you know, just mount this on the back there like that, or wherever. But that is basically all you need. That's the video transmitter and the camera all in one unit, and you are good to go. And you just then need to buy yourself a pair of analog goggles, which you can get from around about £50 upwards. So it's a really cheap and really easy way to get into FPV, dip your toes in it, see if you like it. If you really like the experience and you want to get more into it, then you could either go down the DJI HD route, or you could stick with analog and get something a bit more advanced than this, where you have a separate camera and a separate video transmitter unit, rather than having an all-in-one like this, and you will get a little bit better quality. But as I've said, for getting started, this is absolutely fine for your first ever FPV flight, and just to see whether you like it or not. So that's my setup. I think the whole setup would probably cost you, well, the Bixler is, what is that now at the minute? It's around about £120, I think, the P&P version. This is around about £30, and the ZOHD flight controller Kopilot Lite is around about £40. So pretty cheap if you want to do it like that. And as I've said, some analog goggles are going to cost you about £50. If you do want to go down the DJI HD route, then you're looking more like, well, probably about £400 to £500 to get the goggles and one of the Air units and cameras, etc. So it is a lot more expensive, but the experience is, obviously it's HD, so it is better. But this, you know, it's a great little thing just to get you into it. And on the subject of that, this is what I am going to be giving away. So as I've said, if it's something that you're thinking of doing, having a go with FPV fixed wing, then this is going to be the perfect way for you to get started. All you need then is a model and a flight controller, a pair of analog goggles, and you're good to go. So as I said at the start of the video, if you want to win this, then you need to subscribe to my channel and then just put me a comment in the comments box, and then I will do a draw a few weeks later. So if you look out for that video as well, and I'll announce the winner on that, and I'll post this out to you wherever you are. This is brand new, never been used. The only thing I've done is just taken the wrapping off the box just to open it up, but other than that, it's brand spanking new. So if that sounds good to you, then yeah, subscribe and leave me a comment. And as ever, thanks a lot for watching my videos. I really do appreciate it. If you've got any questions or anything like that, then put a comment in the comments section, and I always make sure I respond to people's questions. And yeah, help me out by giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That is my first milestone. So if you could help me out by doing that, I really would appreciate it. Thanks for all those people who have subscribed, and I will see you soon for the next video.